Take that. I can't do this.
Hello, hello, hello. I hope you can hear me because I've done this tutorial 2 times now and both times the audio got screwed up. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete all of my old footage and everything that I did before. Forget that it ever happened and let's start from the beginning again. What do you say? Okay folks, so this is your After Effects tutorial number 1. There might be a number 2, there might not. I'm definitely not going to get over everything that there is to know in After Effects in this tutorial, but there are plenty of tutorials online all over the place, and it's really important to get a sense of how After Effects behaves before you go looking into that stuff, because either they'll teach you like you're a child, or they'll teach you like you're some industry professional that knows exactly what they're doing. So I'm going to try to hit it right in the middle. Again, like I said, I've done this 2 times now. This is my 3rd time. So honestly, I'm just going to speed run this thing, and I think you'll thank me for saving you the time. I have this tutorial project, and it looks like this. It just says my name. Feel free to put your own name in there. And then it also has all these shapes. This is Illustrator. This should look very familiar to you. And you'll notice that I split my shapes up into layers. This was kind of finicky for me to do because I'm not what I once was in Illustrator, because most of my mind has been crammed full of After Effects knowledge. That has honestly been really interesting unpacking for you. So where I've unpacked that knowledge is into this After Effects helpful info Google Doc. And if you have a question or need more of an explanation on something, like for instance the tools, the shortcuts, things like that that are helpful, you can find that here. The way you might find this document is without the document outline opened. I put everything into headlines and blah 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 so that we have this really helpful outline, so you can kind of skim and scan this document. If you want to learn about the graph editor, you can click the graph editor, or keyframes, or track matte, hide guy we love. You can also press Command F and search this document. Remember to like and subscribe. So I have this Illustrator file open, and the great thing, the really fun thing about Illustrator and Photoshop is that you can just drag this file right into After Effects. One thing I forgot to mention, the only reason why I remembered, is because I moved my cursor down here. You're going to need Media Encoder downloaded for After Effects. This will help you for the last step of converting your files. You'll run it through here before you post it anywhere, use it for anything. I'll show you that later, but you're going to need After Effects and you're going to need Media Encoder if you don't already have it. So don't get to the last step and then realize you need to download this. So anyway, tutorial project, I'll press save, and then close this out. I don't really need it open. I'm going to open up After Effects. You'll also notice that I'm on a PC and you are most likely on a Mac. So I'll try to kind of translate the Control and Command keyboard shortcut things for you, but I'm not going to get it perfect, so you might have to trial and error. So here we are in After Effects. We're just going to press New Composition or New Project, and then we're presented with 2 options here: New Composition and New Composition from Footage. New Composition from Footage will allow you to open up like a piece of footage or a video or something, and it'll match all of the settings that the video has. This is what you want to do if you have like a video that you're animating on top of and you want to match the settings as well as you can. But we're going to click New Composition. So what we have here is the Composition Settings panel, menu, window, I guess it's a window, and you can get back to these settings and change them later. I'll show you how to do that. But right now we want to call this composition Main Comp, because this is our main composition. We will have other compositions too. 1080 by 1080 You can drag this or you can just type it. Oops, I pressed enter. Composition settings. So you can type it in. 1080 by 1080 is a square, and it's also the maximum width of a Instagram post. So 1080 by 1080 is pretty good. Frame rate, you're going to want to do at least 24. I think you start to see it below 24. If you wanted to do like the frame rate of like a hand-drawn animation or something, 8, 12, 15, those are all pretty good. But 30 frames per second is pretty standard, pretty workable. Then we have the start time, which we want at 0. Then the duration. This could be a different number for you. I'm not totally sure what you'll have, but let's do 10 seconds. That's pretty fair. This is frames, seconds, minutes, and then I think this is hours. It wouldn't be days. Then let's do a white background. Okay, let's go. Okay, we're ready. So here we are in After Effects. I have, my workspace is probably a little different than yours. This stuff I don't use, so I'm not going to worry about it, but you're definitely going to want probably audio, effects, and presets, align, character, brushes, probably just align, effects, and character. Those I use those the most. Depends on what you do. But let's open up a new window and let's find something that we might not have. So paragraph is good to have. So I'll add that. That'll go down here. It could go anywhere on your screen, but I'm just gonna take this and you'll notice we have like some weird little options here. I usually put them in this panel. So in the middle, we'll add it to this list like that. If we were to put it down here, it'll split it in half. Then we have, here, I'll show you. Then we'll have 2 lists, I think. No? Oh, yeah. If you want it to be a list, if it's like this in these weird tabs, you can click here and go to Panel Group Settings, Stacked Panel Group. Yeah, that's what we want. So now we have like a cut here with 2 of these things we can open and close. But I like them all just in the same one. So that's how I'm going to do it. One thing that's important, but not really something a lot of tutorials tell you. Well, let's say we accidentally double click on this. It's opened up our panel in the full screen. This is like really confusing and hard, and you don't want to start, oh my gosh, I need to put these over here. Don't do that. Just press the squiggle key that's like underneath the escape key and like above the tab key. If you press that, it'll bring you back to where you were. Depends on where your mouse is. So if I press the squiggle key with my mouse down here in the timeline, it'll open the timeline big, it'll open this big, So that's how you do that. If you get stuck like this, press that squiggle key and you'll get back. I'm gonna put these in here. It's because it's kind of bugging me and I didn't notice before. So yeah, you can move these up and down, whatever. We're gonna need effects for this. Align is good to have. Let's see, we're in our main composition here. Oh, let's bring our Illustrator file. So the good thing about Illustrator is that you can actually, at Illustrator and Photoshop, you can actually just drag it right in. It'll be faced with this window that I always kind of have to think about when I'm picking these. So footage, what it means by footage is that it's gonna be essentially one video. It's gonna be like when you take a video on a camera, it's not split into layers, it's just flat. It's just a flat rectangle of moving pictures. What we want to do is pick composition, because that's what this is. It has layers and things like that. And then because we picked composition, it'll kind of omit this section because layers are kind of implied. And then for our footage dimensions, meaning each individual layer as footage, what size do we want them to be? I don't know them. I don't know the difference. This is 1080. Our Illustrator document is 1080. These aren't going to change now, but if we have differences in sizing, I'm just going to pick document size, and then that should scale it up to our document. But we have no way of knowing because it's the same size both ways. So here it is. This is our new composition. And if we double click in here, And notice how they have the same little picture on both of these. It's because they're both compositions. So now that we're in here, I'm actually going to just bring these layers up to my main comp because I don't really want to have two different compositions that I'm working within just yet. So I'll do Command C, Command V, and then I'll just close this out. We don't need it. Backspace, delete it, and notice how this composition is still there. This is our project panel where it gives you all of the, it shows you all of the assets that you have that your file is using. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're saved into your file. So like if I go to this folder, I don't want to move this out of this folder because it'll break. Let's try it. Okay, I moved it out. I moved it to the desktop. Let's look what happened. Uh-oh, files could not be found. Okay, so now what we have is we have this funny, weird, error message, and that's for all of these layers, right? Because they're gone. So let me show you how to fix that. I'm going to move this, move it back in, and then let's see if it fixes it on its own. File could not be found. Okay, didn't fix it. So let's go to File. Let's go to Dependencies. Find missing footage. Oh, you know what? Maybe we'll go into here. We'll right click and find Replace Footage. Oop. File. Then we'll go to my desktop. After Effects tutorial, click on this guy, import, and it'll actually find all of them. I just gave it one, but it found them all, which is really nice. So let's do some animating. I'm going to teach you how to keyframe first. Basically, every layer in the layer panel has this little drop down here, which is like super important. You click on this, you click down to transform. This will give you a list of all kinds of stuff you'll see later. Then we'll click down here to transform. And then we have all these options. These are all the different transform, variables for the red circle. So we have position, which is X and Y. We have anchor point, which is really annoying. The anchor point is essentially the point where the layer is scaled and rotated. So if we were to rotate this layer, it would rotate around this. It's not rotating around the center or the middle. It's rotating around the anchor point. This is the anchor point tool. Rotate tool, anchor point tool. We can click and drag the anchor point over here and then rotate it from there. This is actually really helpful for like if you have, let's say this is someone's hand, like a character's hand, and then we have an arm here. This would then be the elbow, right? So that's essentially what that's used for. Notice how this box, there's this box around our layer. It doesn't just sample what's on the layer, it samples the entire layer. Essentially, we have a clear box with a red square, with a red circle in the middle. So what we want to do is pretend that this isn't here. Drag the anchor point using the anchor point tool to roughly the center of the circle. And then we'll go back to this one because it's the most useful. And when you use this black arrow, things don't break. Sometimes if you click on something with, especially the pen tool, then it'll be like, it'll do something weird. So I'm going to move the anchor point there, and then I'm going to animate the scale property. So to do that, I'll click on this stopwatch, and you'll notice that they all have stopwatches, right? Any value that has a stopwatch next to it means that you can keyframe it. A keyframe is essentially you saying to the computer, I want this shape at this point at this time. So I press the stopwatch, it automatically made a keyframe for me. I'm going to go out to 1 second. Boom, and we can tell right there. And then I'm going to click here to add another keyframe. And I'm actually going to scale this, scale this down, like to there, right? And notice how it's scaling from the anchor point now. So now you'll notice that it's going from point A to point B, right? This means that you are an animator now. Congratulations. A little issue that we've run into is that it's actually getting smaller, and for this project, I don't want it to get smaller. Let's redo it. So one thing to know is that whenever you can click the stopwatch to turn it off, and wherever, like whatever this property is, when you turn it off, it's gonna stay that way, right? So this is like in between them, and I turned it off, and now it's stuck at 59%. So I'm gonna undo. And so this is what we started as, 100%. Let's turn it off at 100%. Well, let's see, let's go out to 1 second. Turn it back on, and then our 100% has been placed here. So again, you'll notice that when I turn it on, it places a keyframe right where we were at 1 second. And then I will go back to 0 seconds, and then I'm gonna click here and type in 0. So now it's coming up from nothing, essentially, because when it's 0% scale, it's invisible. So there we go. That looks really nice. A lot of the time, this is a pro tip, a lot of the time you'll find yourself animating backwards because you know what it should look like at the end. And so a lot of the animation, a majority of the animation will actually be how do we get it to the end point? Or if you're doing like an animation in and then an animation out, you know, let's say this was 3 seconds long, we'll do it in to 1, and then 2, it'll be up for 2 seconds, and then it'll go out to 3. Regardless, we want to start at 1 because that's where our design is fully fleshed out and fully exists. So let's make this animation for all of these circles. So I'm actually going to do the exact same animation for these other 2 circles. So I'm going to stay at 1 second, click this, press S, this guy, go back to 0, type in 0, there it is. And then go back to 1, I'm holding shift here. See, we want the blue one, S, stopwatch, back to 0, holding shift. I don't have to click this if I don't want to. I can just press 0. There we go. Now we have all of our circles. Oh no, I screwed up. Okay, so I'm gonna change the anchor point. If I were to change it here, it would screw things up. So instead, I'm gonna change it at its resting position. Hopefully, yeah, that's okay. This is the blue layer. There's a gnat on my screen. Bang, that's all you really need. Boom, there we go. So let's play that and look at it. Cool. It's very, very robotic. It's clear that it's just going straight from point A to point B, right? At a constant rate. So what we can do to kind of smooth it out, or if I may, ease it, if you select some keyframes, just like that, box select, and click this button here, that'll take us into the graph editor. And the graph editor is where the magic happens. So here are our 2 keyframes up here. If your graph editor doesn't look like this, I'm gonna right click and just show you, I'm on the speed graph. There's also the value graph, which looks really crazy because I accidentally selected all these values as well. So I'm gonna click away and then just click on this one. There it is, that's our scale. So you can see here, okay, I'm on the value graph now. I'll teach you the value graph first. So the value graph goes just straight line from 0% up to 100%. And we can see that. So this is called easing. Easing is basically so that objects don't move at a constant rate. So they have a little bit of, say, weight to them. So they act more organically. So I'll click here, easy ease out. Basically what these do, I'll click it now. See how it has this line here, and then it has this little handle. When I click that with the keyframe selected, I have this little handle here now. So I'm going to move this just right here. And what it'll do is it'll go from 0% maybe to like say, well, let's look at this. So 50%, it reaches 50% at 15 frames. If I move this, it'll reach 50% at say 23 frames. So let's do that again and just reset it. I'm going to hold shift and pull this forward. Then you'll notice a gradual speed, when I play it, you'll notice a gradual speed up into 100%. So let's watch that. See that? It's a little more gradual. It's hard to tell because it's going straight from 0. So you'll kind of just have to take my word for it. But if you animate, we're going to ease pretty much everything on this composition. So you'll see it. This one, I'm going to put the handle on the other side. If I had a keyframe on the opposite side here, and I wanted handles on both sides to kind of be just a general smooth, you can click this one. These basically just specify where you want the handle to be. So I accidentally clicked this one, and it didn't put a handle on this side because there's no keyframe here, and it did put a handle on this side. If I wanted to, I could select both of these and click this, and it wouldn't really change much. It wouldn't really matter. So I'm going to hold shift and drag this out, and then I'm going to zoom in. Okay, so then I'll hold shift to drag this out, and I have spent a lot of my time in the graph editor in this value graph. It wasn't until recently that I realized the power of the speed graph, which I'll show you next. But for now, as we can see, oh, I don't like the anchor point tool. As you can see, it kind of comes to a little bit more of a rest, which is nice. As opposed to the yellow circle, it actually gets up to scale faster and kind of slows down towards the end. So yeah, you can use the graph editor to edit any keyframes you want, if it's position or whatnot. Yeah, the graph editor is super helpful. It's how you make things look good, essentially. So I'm going to do that to the rest of these values. For this one, I'll just select them both, click this. If you select them both and you get this weird gray box, you can click this thing, show transform box, and that'll make it go away or appear if you want it to. This thing's basically just for like scaling your graph editor, which is kind of strange. I don't think I've ever done that, but you're more than welcome to if you'd like to. So I'll bring that out to 5. And then to make sure it's symmetrical, I'll bring it out to, oh man, that's a lot. I'll go to 10 and 20. How about that? Another trick is these things here, auto zoom graph height. With this selected, that means that if I move this down, it'll snap it up to the top. See how the values change here? Or I can bring it up and then it'll snap it back. I don't know what value. This is at 86. I actually want it at 100. Next is the fit selection to view. That'll make it so that, oh, it's because I only had one selected. Fit selection to view, I have both keyframes selected, and boom, it just put it into the bounds of my viewport. And then this one is fit all graphs to view. It essentially does the same thing, except for this one refers to one line, and this one refers to all lines that you have selected out of this list. Next we have these little buttons here. Essentially, this one is hold. Oh, this one will make it so it's kind of a binary where it's like not doing anything, not doing anything. And then all of a sudden it's at 100%. And then next one is linear, which we started with. This is actually kind of interesting. We have a linear keyframe and an eased keyframe interacting with each other. If I set them both to be linear, that's what we started with. Finally, this one is kind of like this one kind of like smooths, I would guess. So let's set that. So now this one is kind of averaging, I think, a linear with this guy here. If I had another keyframe and I wanted these to kind of flow together better, I would click this. And it'll automatically set the Bezier handles to kind of account for both of those. And funnily enough, you can see it happening here. So anyway, get rid of that. We don't really need any of those techniques for this, but that's what they do. And if you just kind of are working on something and are clicking these, they kind of just make sense. So, right. And then for the yellow, we are going to instead edit it in the speed graph, which I prefer. So I'll click this here, and that'll give me, essentially, it'll select all of my keyframes on the timeline. If you don't want to have to go back and forth and select these. But anyway, select these. I'm on the speed graph now. Basically what this is showing us is that it's going at a constant speed because it's linear right now, right? Let's look at the value graph. It's linear. It's going a constant speed from A to B. Let's go to the speed graph. This is our constant speed. It's 100% per second because it's only taking 1 second. And then it drops after 1 second to 0 per second. At least to me, it didn't make sense at first, but now I actually prefer this graph. So I'm going to select both of these, and let's see what happens when I do easy ease for these. Here, I'll show you on the value graph. The speed graph is now representing this as something different. Okay, so what you can see here is that it's easing in the same way as with an easy ease. What you can see is that it's kind of working its way up to its top speed, which is in the middle, and then it's coming back down. So if we wanted to ease this, and this is why I like the speed graph the most, I'm holding shift and I'm dragging this. It will let you break it off, but I think that shift might not do anything. I'm gonna go to about 64%. You see that in that little yellow screen down here? About 65%, and then 65% on that side. So the reason why I like the speed graph more is because it lets you see the percentage of influence of your eases, so that they can be a little bit more symmetrical. And then also you start to get an idea of, 60% is kind of a little bit more tasteful, 80% is a little more dramatic. And so you kind of just know already what it's going to look like before you even set it and watch it. I don't know if I taught you this yet, but if you press U, it'll isolate the keyframed attributes of your layer. So if I also keyframe the opacity and press U, it'll isolate both of these. If I turn off opacity and I press U, it'll open it. It'll also do this for all layers. If I do Control A to select all, you will either close or open your keyframed layers. Typically, when I do a drawn line in an animation, I will use this effect, and it is an effect. So let's click in here. If you don't have this, it'll be under Window, Effects and Presets, Generate. No, we're not going to search that. We're going to search Stroke. And it's under Generate, so I had it half right. So we have a stroke here. You can also find your effects in this panel here. It's added a new panel, and it'll show all of these options here as well as here. I like, these are the effect controls. I think by default they're in here, but if not, they are right there. Notice how our project panel has gone away. If you do the mouse wheel, it'll bring you back to project. It just kind of gets pushed over to the side here. So what this is asking us for, it's asking us for a path. I assume you know what a path is, like in Illustrator. So what we need to do is use the pen tool on this layer to create ourselves a path. And I'm just gonna kind of guess at what this, how to draw this. Yeah, that's good enough. It just has to be close. So now, if we open this up, we'll see that we actually have a mask. We have masks now has shown up. So this is our mask. It's pink. If you click this little square, you can decide what color you want it to be. I want mine to be something visible. Really like that green. Yeah, that looks nice. That color does not matter. So here we have the path, and you'll notice that we now have mask 1 is selectable, which is right here. Let's click mask 1. And so now that we have our path selected, let's up our brush size, and I'm going to change this color to something noticeable like red. What we want to do is we actually want this stroke to cover our line, and that is because in our paint style we're going to set it to reveal original image. So what this is doing is it's essentially masking off this layer where the red stroke is. And then what we can do is we can mess with these start and end values. So let's go to reveal original image, and let's just kind of look at this. So yeah, it looks like I want to start on end 0%. So I'll set a keyframe, and then I'll go out to 1 second, and then I'll bring it back to 100% at the end of it, at the end of its path, and then we'll kind of see this animate out. Before I start messing with any other layers, I'm actually going to go into this mask, or no, it's in effects. Right here, our end point. This should look familiar, and you actually don't have to go looking for this. If I select a layer and press U, it'll actually show up right there because it's a keyframe. So I'm going to select these, go to the graph editor. I personally like the speed graph, but you can use whichever you want. And I'm going to set these all the way up to 80%. 80% is pretty dramatic. You can set yours to whatever you want, but more easing. Bang, that's pretty crazy. I'm going to bring this back a little bit. So now it'll hit its top speed earlier, and then hopefully be able to kind of ease this back down. It has so much time spent coming down. So let's see. That looks good. 100%, okay. Yeah, it's so fast. It's because it's only at 1 second, it's actually forcing itself to be faster. So you'll see that this top speed will go down if we start dragging this out, right? Because it doesn't have to cover so much. It has more time to cover this ground. So it actually gets, ooh, that looks nice. So now that we have the line animated, that's kind of going to be our focal point. I'm going to time these so that when the line reaches them, that's when they start kind of coming in. So let's see, it passes the yellow circle right there. So I'm going to select these keyframes, bring them over. I'm holding shift to snap it. I'm just going to set these up like, let's see, the red. Start the red there because that's kind of where it's in the middle. And then the blue is kind of like right at the end, right there. Blue. Cool. So what I'm noticing is that these circles are taking forever. Like the yellow one, we don't even see it until it's right here, but we know that it starts on this frame. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to just move these all over so that they all snap and get the same time. I can select all of these, go to the graph editor, and actually edit them at the same time. I'm going to reset their easing so that they're all the same. And I'm actually I'm actually animating all of these scale values at the same time, which is nice. So that they're all exactly the same. Okay, I think what we're going to have to do is just cheat it. So maybe I don't want the yellow come up when this passes it. Maybe I want it to kind of, like, let's go like there. Maybe I just want to be able to see it when it's passing. And the blue be right there. We'll just want to see it. Yeah. That looks really nice. I don't think that the red is like different enough from the yellow. Or they're happening too close together. So let's move this over. We'll move the blue over. I'm just messing with the timing here because that's what I do. But yeah, I like that. A couple good shortcuts to know is B and N. N will set the end of your composition, or your, I guess this is called the render region. And then B will set the beginning of your render region. And what this does is it will not only loop within this area, but it'll also only render in this area. So I'm going to snap to this keyframe, press N, and it is where it should be. And then, yeah, now it'll loop. Ooh, here's a good tip. So if you select all, like everything that you want, it could be anything, and put your cursor, like say at the beginning, hold Alt. You can actually drag, like you can scale in relation to the cursor. So I'll hold Shift, and because I grabbed this one, it'll snap this one here, which will snap the rest. So that looks nice. One thing that's fun is, see how this, like if this were 3D, this line would come above the red circle, right? Like maybe the red circle is kind of in, it's still transparent, but it's in between this, like it kind of wraps around it. So let's do that. So once you have your line speed and animation, like how you want it, the line, Control D, or Command D, sorry, to duplicate it. And then it has all the same effects and everything. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to really sneakily take this pen tool here and kind of cut it off right here. Just go around it and go like that. So now all I have to do is take this layer, put it above the red circle. That's kind of interesting. Well, yeah, that makes sense because it does come above the blue circle here. So yeah, there you go. Bang. Just kind of stumbled into that nice design decision. What I want to do with this text is I want to have it kind of pop up out of nothing. So I want it to be unseen, then pop up, and then be seen. People do this for text all the time. So what I'm actually going to do is right click and go to New Solid. And like I showed you before, or maybe I cut it out of the video, Solid's basically text matte. Solids basically create a box or just a blank composition. I guess like a colored in composition. I'm going to do red so I can see it. That's either the size of your composition, your main composition, which it defaults to, make comp size, or you can make it bigger if you want. We're going to do comp size, and I'll press OK, and there it is. Wow, that is striking. So I'm going to bring it down here to name, and then what do I want to do? I'm going to press T to open opacity, bring it to like 50% opacity, just so we can see through it. Then what I'll do is I will kind of just squish it down to, you can hold Shift to constrain it. I'm going to bring it down to about here. Zoom in a little. Yeah, about right there. And then we can animate our text going below this. What this shape is going to do, or this solid rather, is it's actually going to mask out our Charlie Beam, or whatever your name is. I don't know your name, and it's most likely not Charlie Beam. It's going to mask out this text or this layer completely. Just make sure that it's above your name layer, and then let's animate it. So this is essentially going to act like a mask, but technically I think it's called a matte for this purpose. So I'm going to bring it to maybe 1 second, press the stopwatch, bring it over to 20, or at least snap it to the end of our composition. It's weird that it's like that. I'm going to snap this to these keyframes. Then we'll just, this is the X value and this is the Y value. I'm going to bring the Y value down below it, and then let's keyframe these. So if you're in the value graph, you'll notice that we have two values here and only one value selected. This is the Y position and this is the X position. If you want to ease in the value graph using position, because it has two values associated with it, it won't let you do it. It won't let you edit it, basically. It'll let you do an easy ease, but that's as far as you can get. So what you're going to want to do is do separate dimensions. Right click it, separate dimensions. Then we have X position and Y position. The X, it's just going up and down, so I'm actually going to turn off X position. We don't need it. I'm pressing U to isolate the Y position, selecting this guy. This is, you know, Bob's your uncle. And then we have a nice little ease. And of course, I screwed it up, so I'm going to go back here. Because even I do this. Keyframe Assistant, time reverse keyframes to flip them. And there we go. Bing. I'm going to bring this out like to 3 seconds. Yeah. So we have a little bit of breathing room at the end. What I've done here is I've eased these. I'm going to do it better just because I care. And I'm not going to do it in the value graph. I'm going to do it in the speed graph. Well, this speed graph looks kind of funny, which is cool. We like that. 76, sure. Yeah, that looks nice. The strength of the value graph is that you can actually bring this kind of up a little bit too far. And then it'll go up and then back down, which is cool. Let's do that. Now, of course, this will not be eased anymore. It does kind of just hit it like abruptly. Let's go to the speed graph, see if we can, yeah, see how it hits it abruptly there. Put a keyframe there, and then I can ease it like that. I'm going to just select these two. Oh, this one is kind of at an angle. It doesn't need to be, so let's just go like that. Beautiful. I'm going to actually hold shift and bring this up so it doesn't go up as high. That looks nice. I'm really happy with that. Getting out of the graph editor. This is where the fun begins. This is when I teach you how to do a track matte. So this is our text matte, right? And we've made sure that our animation gets hidden by this. I'm going to turn the opacity back up. And essentially what we're going to do is we're going to go to, so I have track matte. I have a couple things here. So these the little tiny, almost unseeable buttons here will open up some extra options for you. So this one is very helpful. This one will give you a bunch of new settings that I'll teach you later. And then this one will do the track matte. Does it give us mode? Yeah, it gives us mode as well. So these two columns are created from this one, and they're both really helpful. And that's what we need. We need a track matte. So on our name, we're going to go over here to track matte. I'm going to click alpha matte. Nope, I'm going to pick alpha inverted. Yep. Essentially, this one has hidden itself, and this layer is sampling the text matte in order to hide itself. So the reason why I didn't use a mask is because, I'll show you. If I were to put a mask like this on top of Charlie and then go to M for masks and do subtract, when the layer moves, the mask actually moves with it. So what's useful about track mattes is that they don't move with the layer. They can stay stationary. Like just in this area is this text, or is this layer hidden, or maybe like half. I'm just eyeballing it. I pressed V to get to this. Just eyeballing it. Maybe like halfway through we'll have it start. So at about between 15 and 20, bring this over holding Alt, and then I'm bringing my cursor up to about there. We'll see what starting there looks like. Nah, I like it faster. Let me just bring it to the middle, just eyeballing. maybe aligned with that. Looks pretty good. Maybe even slower or even faster. Yeah, that looks good. That hits nice. Yeah, I like it. So now we're going to talk about rendering. This really only needs to be 2 seconds long, I think. I'm pressing N to end it there. Let's see. Yeah, that's all you need. Okay, so for rendering, we have our main comp here. Make sure we're selected, we're in here, and this work area is what will render. So like I just did it, if you're out at 3 seconds, you know, bring it into 2 or wherever you want. This is what's going to render. So let's go to composition, add to render queue, which it'll bring us into here. We were just in here, we're in here now, and it's added this line here. So we're rendering the main comp. We're using these best, quote unquote, best settings for the render settings. Full resolution, comps frame rate is 30, sure. Motion blur on selected layers. Work area only is really important. So if we did length of comp, it would do all 30 or 40 or 20 seconds or whatever I set it to earlier. We want to do work area only, so we can crop the time in into, you know, what we want. So let's do, this looks good to me. If you had a really high res file, you could do quarter or third or half for, like, if you were just going to show someone briefly and rendering took like 3 days, which is not typical. So what we want to do here is we want to go to format, and you might already be on this, I'm not sure, but format QuickTime. You'll notice that this changed. Apple ProRes 422 HQ. That's pretty standard. I think this is called a codec. I'm not totally sure. Yeah, it is. Video codec. Here's what I understand. I've come to understand that Apple ProRes 422 HQ is standard. If you want your project to be transparent, like if you wanted to have, create a, we'll do both. Let's do both. So we have the Apple ProRes 422 HQ. That's good. This is for like something that is like opaque, just its own video. We'll click OK. This looks good. And then we're going to put this in our tutorial folder. We'll call it name animation. And make sure that we have quicktime.mov. Save and click render. Bang. And if you heard that sound, that means you are an animator. Congratulations. So now we'll go into our folder and we'll see it, name animation. This is our MOV file, and you'll notice that it's 8.79 megabytes. I have had files that have been gigabytes. This is a completely uncompressed video file. This is as high res as you can possibly get, and you cannot send this to your grandma. Don't text this to your mom. Don't text this to your dad. This is not, people can't watch these. They're too big. So what we need to do is we need to open up Media Encoder. Media Encoder, like I said earlier, you have to have this. So in order to get this into a size that Grandma can watch on her iPod, just drag it over and then make sure that this is set to H.264 because that is MP4 format, which is pretty much standard MPEG-4. That one's fake. H.264 is your uncle. So just click play, basically. Match source, high bit rate, that's what you want. Just match it and high. Press play. It's already done. Let's go back into here. It'll put it right in the same folder that your original file was in. Let's play it. There it goes. That looks really nice. So yeah, there's your animation. I'm actually going to call this Charlie Beam Animation. Charlie Beam Name Animation. You can turn this in and you'll get a sticker or maybe a candy bar or something. You'll get 3 pieces of candy from Mrs. Beam if you turn in one of these. So if you want to learn more, I'll have another episode up quickly, shortly. Yeah, have a great day. I'll see you in the next one.